Eugene Rapay of the Des Moines Register in Kansas City, Iowa State, taking care of business and beating Cincinnati 76-56 at a 9-point lead at halftime, and seemed like they've kind of righted the ship. And Eugene joins Greg Smoke, Paul Catalina, and David Smoke on 365 Sports in KC. Find a little bit of a quiet place in those where they do the pressers. Eugene, thanks for your time. Iowa State, just kind of a nice, clean win. Move on, get ready for the next one.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a scare towards the end there if you're a Cyclone fan, especially when Taman Lipsey went down in the final minutes of the game with what appeared to be a groin injury. But according to Coach TJ Otzelberger and Taman Lipsey, they both claim that he'll be good to go for tomorrow. You can only take their word for it. I guess we'll see when they take on BYU. But for the rest of the game, it definitely felt like business as usual. Great play on both ends of the court for the Cyclones.
Eugene, they closed out very strong. I mean, I remember checking the score. They were up by 9, and then Cincinnati didn't score again for the last 3.5 minutes of the game. So they're on a roll. But you mentioned Lipsey getting hurt, and is health the most critical thing to this team? Because in their worst spots this season, it's been when they've been down a guy or two.
100%. Health has been the biggest thing that has held Iowa State from reaching its true potential. We saw what they looked like in the beginning of the season, especially in the first half of the year when they were just on a roll. And it felt like just as they were starting to heat up, they were dealt the Mila Momcilovic injury. Since then, it's been kind of like a revolving door. As soon as one guy comes, another guy comes off. At one point, it was Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert. So that has been the biggest hurdle for Iowa State as it just kind of tries to rebuild consistency. That has been the biggest difficulty for them so far. They're 20-2 now when they're at full strength. And obviously a different picture when they're not at full strength.
Eugene, take us inside Ames, man. What's kind of the talk about this team, and what's the talk about the ceiling for this team as we now get deep into March?
Yeah, there's just so much optimism and so much excitement for the team just from looking at what they've been able to attain this year. I mean, they reached number 2 in the AP ranking for the first time ever in school history. TJ Otzelberger has just done a fantastic job as head coach, and just the 4 years that he's been here, elevating the program each season. But now the biggest concern is, the potential still seems to be pretty high. It still feels like they have the tools and the recipe to go far, but health has been the biggest concern as of late. And, whether or not Iowa State is able to quickly figure it out, especially as we come down the stretch here, they want this to be a fantastic story of how the team reached its first ever Final Four and maybe not be looking back at it like, oh, what could have been if this player was healthy or if this had happened.
They just played BYU. That's the game in Ames. BYU won that game in overtime. Iowa State had a lead, a pretty nice, comfortable lead, and then BYU did. So very recent. Does that help that that's right there on their mind from a couple of weeks ago?
I think for both teams, it definitely helps a lot. For Cyclones, it gives them a little more fuel just because that was their senior night. That was supposed to be this brilliant send-off in a building that they don't typically lose in, especially over the last 2 years. But for Iowa State, that, like you said, that was just a crazy game. They were trailing by 21 points in the second half, somehow found a way to climb all the way back, push the game into overtime. They had their opportunities, but could not finish the comeback. And credit to BYU. Richie Saunders was an absolute beast that game. Keba Keita had some amazing rebounds and just great play on the glass. And as a result, BYU was able to hang on. I think Iowa State, just being on the losing end, has a little more fuel going into this one. But BYU has more rest, plenty of depth, and just plenty of length across that lineup.
Is this team, when healthy, is it built to the best way that it can be? Because it doesn't seem like they have holes at all. Like when they're out there full strength on the court, they don't really have a thing that they don't do well.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement, especially what we saw early in the year, just the way that they were able to push Auburn to such a, they were beating Auburn in Maui first half, built a big lead. Auburn came back and ultimately won on a last-second tip-in. But since then, that loss has sort of aged well, I guess you could say, in a way. Iowa State, when they're fully healthy, just clicking on all cylinders, the defense is definitely their backbone, and just their ability to generate turnovers and make opponents uncomfortable. And then offensively, it's always 3 to 4 guys that are scoring in double figures. There's not exactly one player you can key on or lock down, and then the rest of the team or the rest of the product suffers. So I just think that balance at both ends of the court has been huge for the Cyclones. And if they're healthy and if they're able to really get into a groove again, they can definitely be a team to watch out for in the big dance.
So BYU tomorrow, it's a grind, man. You got to just keep on winning, because if you get through that, most likely, again, it might be Houston, who beat them by 9 earlier in the year. So playing early in the day, as TJ said much about the fact, I always thought that could be a dangerous game because you're not quite locked in, but that's tournament time. That's what you're going to do next Thursday or Friday or whenever. Get it out of the way and be able to rest your legs and watch everybody else the rest of the day if you do that, or you go back to the hotel or whatever you do.
Yeah, it seems like for Iowa State, especially just given their health situation right now, this is kind of a nice advantage in a way. You get to see what happens in the games ahead of you. You get a full day of rest before you go back into the game, and especially if you advance past tomorrow's, when it goes down to the semifinals, that's an extra, 6 to 8 hours of rest, and Iowa State's going to need every single second of it. The players don't really seem bothered by it. They did mention that it definitely throws the routine around when you have such an early start. Like, they're getting up even earlier for shoot around. They don't have as much time during the day to really, walk through practice. Everything's a little more sped up, a little more express. But so far, it hasn't really seemed to bother them too much.
What have you seen from the rest of the tournament? Who is, in your opinion, locked in?
Oh man, I can't wait to still see how these top 4 seeds do. You get the double bye. Like, there's always that argument. Like, is there such thing as too much rest, quote unquote? And a team like Houston, they've been consistent all year, but can they do it when the lights are at the brightest? BYU is just red hot. I mean, there's so much to love about that team, just from their depth, being able to run 10 deep, 10 or 11 deep, so much length across the board. And then you look at Tech. Tech has always been ferocious. Grant McCaslin has done a great job this year. JT Toppin is dynamic. And Arizona, when they're able to get it going, they're just a difficult team to deal with on both ends of the court. So honestly, I guess we'll know more once the quarterfinal games tip off. But I'm just curious to see how those top 4 seeds do and how the rest of this tournament unfolds.
Eugene, they're in Kansas City, Missouri, by the way. Sometimes people get that mixed up, but it's not far. Iowa State fans are passionate. We know that. Was it a pretty heavy Iowa State flavor this morning?
Yeah, so this was my first Big 12 tournament, actually, and one of the things that I said was, wow, it's really amazing how much people came down from Ames, and I know they've called it, quote-unquote, Hilton South, but to actually see the amount of red in the seats today for an 11:30 a.m. tip-off on a Wednesday was impressive. And all anyone told me was wait until you see Thursday, or if they make it to Friday, wait until you see what that turnout looks like, or if they go to a title game, just how much fan support comes. And it was really impressive today. I'm excited to see what it'll look like tomorrow too, but definitely palpable buzz from Cyclone Nation.
So go ahead, Paul.
Go down into Westport tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see, go to Kelly's in Westport, and you will see a chock full of Cyclone fans there.
No doubt about it. No, but it's because there's beer, right? Is that what you're saying? Beer and barbecue. Eugene, I just noticed, did you cover Villanova or did you go to Villanova? Is that on your byline on Twitter?
Yeah, it was. Yes, I went to Villanova and I covered Villanova as well, and other schools in the Big East for probably about 8 to 9 total years before I got here. I'm familiar with the Big East tournament. I'm familiar with NCAAs and the Big 12, but this is my first time being at the Big 12 tournament.
I like what they do. I do. I love the fact that they do a good job there, and the fact you're from covering Villanova, went to Villanova. You understand basketball. My God, it's a great program, of course, that they've had over the years. Thanks for your time, man. Enjoy. Well, let me ask you this, and I don't know if you saw the quote. Did you see the quote a couple of nights ago from Jamie Pollard about Arizona State getting that subsidy that allowed them to balance their budget in athletics? And Jamie kind of said, this is kind of like the uphill battle we faced. Did you see that by any chance?
I personally did not. I'm going to have to look into it. My thing is that might be a little too above my pay grade, but now I'm curious. You got me curious.
Well, we asked Travis Hines, but we had Jamie on a couple of weeks ago. It was just the fact that these schools like Iowa State or whoever, if I say the wrong school, then people, I know. But it's a dog-eat-dog world, man. You got to find the way to scratch and claw to get the money. And what happened is Arizona State's university ended up I think it was like $30-something million that they gave to the athletic department. It ended up being a $51 million subsidy to balance their budget because they were in debt in athletics badly. And so was the school. And it was just another way for them to have a chance to even it out, move forward, have money that otherwise you weren't going to have. And that's the whole deal right now in college athletics.
Yeah, it seems like whatever way you can get the money to work, or any way you can get that nickel and dime, just build money up in this day and age. It's like you'll take it, I guess.
Enjoy it. Thank you. Enjoy Kansas City. Eugene Rapay from the Moines Register covering Iowa State. They win by 20 today.